Thank you, Steffi, and welcome everyone. Very exciting to see you all joining our event. My name is Susanne. I'm responsible for diversity, equity, and inclusion at Thoughtworks Germany, and I also work as a community manager for Munich. Together with Steffi, who you just met, I'm the organizer of this event series, which we actually started already last year in October, and this is our 7th event. If you have missed the past ones, but you're interested in the talks, you'll find all the recordings on our website, and we will post the link to the chat. Before we begin, I would like to say some words why we have actually started this series and also about Thoughtworks and what does that have to do with Thoughtworks. We are a global software consultancy, and you'll find us currently in about 15 countries. We're specialized on creating custom software with and for our clients. As an organization that is working globally, diversity has somehow always played an important role for us, just based on that. But already years back, as many other organizations in the industry, we realized that we're lacking on including many of our colleagues in giving equal opportunities, especially to women and other underrepresented gender minorities. So we started with having a close look on gender diversity. And today we have over 40% of people identifying as women or underrepresented gender minorities in leadership positions, and about the same amount of technologists. In the past years, our focus also shifted then on many other dimensions of diversity. With this process came not just experience on how to make a workplace more inclusive, it also led us to have many colleagues who are very passionate and engaged about these topics and represent various dimensions of diversity themselves. We had the feeling that in the past years, diversity and inclusion have become such buzzwords, but on the other hand side, most discussions are often lacking concrete ideas and initiatives. So we wanted with this series to create a platform to share our experiences and learnings, and to have a safe space for discussions and exploring new steps altogether. Today, my colleague Yaksha will talk about different steps that we can take to ensure that women and underrepresented gender minorities are not only paid fairly, but are given adequate support to progress in their careers. Yaksha, who is currently based in Australia, is a mom and a lead consultant at Thoughtworks. Throughout her career, she has played many roles, and at Thoughtworks, she has been a trainer for client engagements and also coached incoming grads. She has experiences in coaching and leading engagements to deliver software products for our clients using agile and lean principles across different industries. So if you have questions during the talk, as Steffi mentioned before, just ping them to the chat. We will have a question and answer session afterwards. And with these words, I'd like to welcome Yaksha to our virtual stage.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the warm welcome. Is this the time where I can share my screen? Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you everyone for having me. As some of you saw in the chat, I'm from Melbourne. I've put my background for Melbourne for that reason. Today we've gathered to talk about an important topic, that is gender pay gap. And if it continues, it's going to take another 100 years to fix it. I don't know what you guys think, or what everybody else on this call thinks. I don't think it's good enough. I don't think I want to leave my daughter to grow up in an environment where there's going to be a gender pay gap and she's not going to be paid fairly. So let's start with a video. What do kids have to say about gender pay gap?
Yes. Benji definitely.
Yeah, it's just weird. Pretty much, we're just doing the same thing.
Because he took his time, maybe? He did it last? No idea. I did not know that.
No. No one knows that.
No one at all. Say if you were working together with a boy and a girl and that you were both doing the same thing, then I don't really get it why boys will get paid more than girls. I think it would make them feel disappointed, really.
Just because you're a boy doesn't mean you're completely different. You're just different because you look different.
I get disappointed about that because boys and girls are the same and they're equal. There's nothing better than boys about girls. We could tell every boss in the world, you know, they're exactly the same boys and girls. You know that.
Just get a company, and then if I do get a company, I get lots of people to join it, and then I'll just say it's unfair why the boys get more money than girls.
We could just go around to the world just saying we should just pay boys and girls evenly because so no point.
Even though I'm a boy and I get paid more, I think women and men who do the same job should get the same amount of money.
Okay, cool. So, did you know by 2030 we will have mostly self-driven cars, and we all will be moving towards having, I guess, healthcare system, which will be hospitals will be on the way out, and we'll have remote ways of trying to solve our problems with healthcare, with all the telehealth in the world that is coming our way. But one thing will still exist in 2030. That is the gender pay gap. And if it goes the way it is, it will keep going and we will not make any difference. We've heard lots of reasons. And, you know, we hear, these are the quotes which I've just put over here. I'll let you guys read them. But I guess the thing is, there's lots said about the gender pay gap. There's not much of action. And what we want to try and do is take action to minimize that gap so we don't take a century to bridge it. As we are aware, gender pay gap is influenced by a number of factors, including discrimination and bias in hiring and in pay decisions. Women and men working in different industries are paid and working in different jobs are paid differently. With female-dominated industries and the job attracting lower wages, women are paid disproportionately. Women taking career break are penalized for the career break they take, and they have to take a stopgap in their career to catch up for their pay and career progression. Interestingly, I wrote an article last year about gender pay gap, and I mentioned one of the key thing to do is providing more flexibility for women, and one of the things is working from home. COVID hit, working from home is by default now. So who knew how, I guess, the world changes and makes us, necessity becomes the mother of all inventions, I guess, in that context. 57% of the male counterparts, or 8 times as many as men, have asked flexibility and work pay as they become senior or get in senior jobs. One of the things which I wanted to try and leave on this screen was men are more likely than women to negotiate for what they want. The gender pay gap starts from day dot you submit your resume for that job. Let it be your first job, or let it be a third, or let it be a fourth or fifth job. That it's a compounding problem from where you start. So I'm going to run past an example. Let's say both men and a woman are offered the same position, $40,000 a year. The woman accepts while a man negotiates, and he gets the offer at $45,000. So he's receiving $5,000 a year more than for the same job, which means over 10 years, he has earned $50,000 more. Is that correct? No. Say for argument's sake that both receive an annual pay rise of 3%. And at the end of 10 years, the man's going to be earning 74,500 and the woman's going to be earning 66,200. Over a period of time, the gap has introduced $8,300,000, which is actually $64,000 over 10 years. And this is the exponential problem I'm trying to explain. As it goes, the gap's going to be exponential. We are not even considering other factors like stock or career breaks or something. This is just a plain simple example. Let's look at what's happening around the world and what are the stats around the world. So the problem is not local to any country or city, it is global. Our friends down the pit in New Zealand are doing a bit better than others, but countries like South Korea have a bigger gender pay gap. It's interesting to see Germany has a gender pay gap of 21% in spite of having very good, I guess, policies around women at workplace, flexibility of work, carers leave, and also, I guess your head of state or your prime minister or the president, I don't know what you call the German head, she's a woman too, and it's still so high. Whereas Italy is 5%. So it's interesting to see what's Italy doing versus what's happening in Germany and why does the gender pay gap exist. So who's responsible for it and what needs to happen? So the way I have looked at it is from 3 levels or 3 perspectives. What we do at an organizational level will have an impact in the industry. What managers and leaders do will improve many organizations. So as we have more managers and leaders making change and advocating for gender pay gap, we will improve lots of different organizations and they will in turn make a better place or a better industry. Having said that, I'm really a practical person. What you do as an individual is the action you have control on. So what's within your sphere of influence is what actions you take as an individual. So depending if you're a manager or if you're an individual, there are some things you could do and make this world a better place. So first thing first, starting at an organizational level, it's important that we create transparency. One of the things we do at Thoughtworks is we share salary brands for our professional consultants or the people who work as professional consultants. For each grade, we have a salary band and we share some data points around what's the median, what's the max, what's the gender pay gap at each salary band, what's the highest band, what's the highest paid for each particular band across roles as well. So we try to share this data and publish it. And this data is a very good guide for our folks internally to have their salary conversations. I'm not sure if all countries publish it, but this is published in Australia, definitely. And I would strongly encourage as many countries to publish it as possible. The other thing is supporting your leaders and managers. Being a leader or a manager is not easy. So it's as an organization, it's your role to make sure your leaders and managers are well supported. Understanding the biases and increasing cultural awareness is important. So the next one is collecting and analyzing data. So this is interesting because I was doing this talk, I went around and searched what sort of data my own company is doing. So what Thoughtworks is doing. So what I understand is at the end of every, so we have once a year salary reviews. At the end of every salary review, they look at averages across women, across men, and underrepresented gender minorities. They see the stats at different levels. Who were the top 10 increases and what was their split? Is there a pattern? Did we miss anyone? Are there more men in that? Are there more women? If so, why so? Did someone get recently promoted? Is that impacting our data? Did someone recently resign? Is that impacting our data? Who are the bottom 10 performers? Review the data slices, any data patterns. This also helps a lot to remove any form of bias out. And we focus on making decisions based on data. Regular analysis of this data will set a benchmark for informed and objective decisions and provide visibility of changes over time. And it will help tracking gender at each grade and role level. Other things to think about is, on an average, how long does it take for a woman to progress in comparison to men in your organization? So one of my manager, I guess we used to have someone called as office principals or who run this. She was on a mission to find out how long did it take our women to progress. And she noticed that it was taking a little longer for women to progress. It took her a while, but she gathered the data, she presented back to leadership, and then they took actions to change from there. How long do women and men stay in your organization? How often do women leave for better pay or flexibility or flexible working? When you run training sessions, who attend those mostly? What is the gender pay gap trend at each grade level in your organization? So these are some things to think about from data, and there's lots to be done in this space. Another thing is championing equal opportunities. As much as it's important to be doing, I guess, unbiased decision making, it becomes quite hard if we don't create equal opportunities and set equal expectations. While I was prepping for this talk, I interviewed one of my managers and said, how do you ensure that there are equal opportunities for everyone? And she said an interesting example with me. She said, at Thoughtworks, one of the things is we assess your community contribution. And she said, we started noticing that women who are in the early days of their career are very comfortable in doing that community contribution. Women who are at the later stage in their career or who are at quite senior levels are quite comfortable to do that community contribution. But then there's this pattern in between when, I guess, women take leave for as carers leave, or when they just come back from carers leave for initial couple of years, it's harder for them to do the community contribution in the form of doing conference speaking or doing things like, attending meetups after work or doing things those kind. So they said we started changing those expectations. We started creating an even playing field where we said, okay, what we're going to do is what are other things what women can do who are returning to work and are not always expected to do conference talks. What is it they could do? They came up with different things. They came up with lunchtime events, what they could contribute to. They come up with different things like, supporting juniors on your teams, supporting grads. So they broaden the definition of what that community contribution could be. That is one example of creating equal opportunities, but there are lots of other such examples at your workplace that could be happening. Another thing is having clear growth strategies. As I mentioned, sometimes women take longer to grow or get leadership roles. And then that inadvertently puts them at the back seat for getting better pay. So it's important to empower women to attain leadership roles and have clear steps for career progressions and support available early on. Setting a stage equal for opportunities and expectations for women is really, really pivotal. If an organization is not providing these equal opportunities to women, it is going to be challenging to assess them fairly and objectively when it comes to performance. Despite parallel education and experience, there is data that proves that women continue to miss out on leadership roles. So we need to be doing more in this space. So moving on from organization to managers level, one of the important things to be aware of is, based on the Gallup survey, many people leave organizations not for better work or better flexibility or pay. They leave organizations for bad managers. And in this context, we are referring to folks who are responsible for your performance or who are responsible for your peer reviews. That if you don't have a manager who's your trusted partner, you will see people leaving very quickly and you will be losing talent in your organization. And in this day and age, talent is really important. So that's another reason why it's important as managers to be trusted partners. And as managers, it's important to recognize that men and women approach salary negotiation differently. It took me a while to realize that I actually may not be getting paid equally as my counterparts. And that's fault of no one. I just realized I'm not doing enough. And that's where I started finding out data points on how does this whole process works. I was just not aware of the process. My lack of awareness of what the process was so bad. But I was really fortunate. I always had good managers who guided me to help me put a better case. If you don't give them data points, it's going to be hard for them to fight for you. So it's important for you to collect those data points as well. I have a story to share. As I mentioned, men and women negotiate salary differently. When I was prepping for this talk, I interviewed another manager, and what she said is recently she hired someone and they accepted a job offer at a market rate, or might have been a bit lower than the market rate. And she was so excited because she could hire a new person into her department with a budget which fit within her, I guess, what was given to her. Quickly, she realized in a couple of salary reviews that was not the best thing to do. She's had a number of hard conversations with that person because they've been a star performer, but she was constantly reminded by them that she was underpaid and it was not fair. And since that day, she took it up on her as a learning that whoever she brings it, she strives to bring them at the highest possible salary versus the lowest possible salary. Because in the first year, when you come in on a new job, you don't get a pay rise for another 1 year almost. And that puts you in a very interesting position when you have other people who join in throughout the year. Another thing what we do at Thoughtworks is we try to correct salaries. So if we find someone in the market who's coming on a higher salary compared to what we have internally, we will go out of our way to make sure there's a salary correction and bring everybody at the same level. Finding unconscious bias is so important. Relying on policies alone is not enough. It's important to recognize we all have unconscious bias. I would be lying to you all that I do not have unconscious bias. The thing is, what do you do with that unconscious bias and what decisions you make is important. Every time, keep a check on yourself as a manager when you are trying to assess someone or compare someone. Is it an unconscious bias or is it really a fair comparison based on the data points you have? What is the context over there? Try and understand and get as much information as possible. Really ask yourself if the reason is legitimate or is it a bias? Are you looking for a perspective of skills required and not just from a personal or past experience? We tend to make decisions based on our past experience, but we shouldn't try to just use that as an indicator to make those decisions. We should try and rely on data when it comes to things like salary and pay reviews. Often men are promoted on potential while women get promoted based on performance. So how can we set the stage equal for those? And unconscious bias plays a very important role in this. We have to actively bring it back to data and not just rely on our past experience or based on what someone's speaking or how comfortable they are in what they talk. Another aspect is being specific when it comes to expectations. One of the managers I was speaking to, so when I was trying to prep for this talk, I interviewed another manager. One of the managers I was speaking to asked her, okay, so you do lots of, performance conversations. How do you make sure you are consistent when it's a man or a woman? And she said that whenever I go into the conversation, I keep it open-ended. And what I try to do is I have my questions listed. If they don't cover those questions, I make sure those 3 questions are covered. So she bases her decisions based on those 3 questions. First being what's their reflection on the past year? What were their highs? What were their lows? What are the goals they want to achieve for next year? What was their contribution in the community? So she tries to keep those questions, and regardless whether you're a man or a woman, she wants to make sure she's collecting those data points. So this is one way to make sure you're very specific on what you're expecting and you're collecting those data points. Now, it's very important as a manager, you should be constantly collecting feedback and providing feedback. As we say, feedback is something as an individual you should be constantly collecting about yourself to improve. But even as managers, what are your people doing? Do you wait till the end of the year to collect feedback about them, or do you actively collect feedback on regular basis? So when you come to the end of the year, it's not all clogged up towards the end of the year to collect that information and do a reflection very quickly. Often managers do that because they're time poor, but the ones which I know and the ones which are organized will have a process to collect them on an ongoing basis. I've been also interviewing some managers, and one of the managers said her people should be able to see her as a trusted partner, as I mentioned, and she thinks it's her role to collect feedback, create equal opportunities, and do all the industry research. Now, in Thoughtworks, we sometimes have something called as pre-peer review catch-ups. She said those pre-pay review catch-ups are great, but that's not the only place she relies on people to give her that information. She thinks it's her job to collect it on an ongoing basis and get it and use that as a way to see what's provided in the industry, do her own assessment before agreeing what she's going to provide them in their salary hike. Even the remuneration is an activity which occurs once a year. Both the managers and employees, or individuals in this context, have to work throughout the year to make it successful. So salary review or performance conversation is not a one-way street, it is a two-way street. Now that we've looked at what happens at an organizational level, what actions can be taken at organizational level, at manager or leadership level, let's move on to what can be done as an individual, or what you could be doing if you're one of those who's preparing for your next pay review or a next salary review or a performance review. Be proactive. This is something I've learned, a very good lesson over years. I felt I was not aware, and it was so important for me to realize, how should I be doing this? Set goals. Be clear on what your goals are. They don't need to be, big lofty goals, but at least knowing what you're doing next, where you're going next, is important. Listen and demonstrate that you can action on feedback. Don't wait until the review time comes to find out what was the feedback you were given, or what is the recent feedback you've got. Keep collecting the feedback and demonstrate that when you receive feedback, you're open to it and you can work on it, and you can show that you're taking feedback and working on it to make required changes. Talk to your managers and peers regularly, asking feedback and setting those goals. This way, when you get to your review at the end of the year, you've demonstrated improvement and ability to do the task or in the role you're in. What do you say when you're an introvert? I think this is less about an introvert and extrovert. It's more about how can you keep yourself organized and accountable when it comes to your reviews. Actively thinking of career progression. What does this mean for you? Now, at what point I'm in my career, I've just had a baby 2 years ago. She's almost 2 years now. I just had a baby 2 years ago. My priorities are different compared to what I was 2 years ago. And that's okay. Career progression doesn't mean having lofty goals. Career progression means, what is the next thing you need? What support you need from your organization? Often women don't know what to ask, and they think by asking flexibility, they shouldn't be asking for more pay. That is not right. Keeping your pay and the flexibility you need at work as two separate things. Every woman or a man should be given that flexibility to support their families or any other personal hobbies they want to do. That shouldn't interfere with your pay or review conversation. As I said, do your homework, read the market, understand what you're worth. Can you clearly define what your expectations are internally and what those are what for the similar role in the market you're getting paid? Are you able to articulate your achievements? One of the things what I do often for my peer review is collect all this information and put it in a deck. I tend to ramble. Even right now, I've prepared some notes for myself to talk through this talk. In order for us to successfully communicate what we want and influence that decision, it's important to, I guess, come up with a structured way. And one of the way is try and see what's in the market, do some analysis, put that information together, collect your feedback, what are the trends that you're observing, and then present that information. Like for Thoughtworks, I use the internal data points in my salary conversations. We have that information published. I use those data points to have. Learn to negotiate. Negotiation is a skill. It's not something you wake up one morning and you know how to do it. You need to practice it, and it's okay you don't have it today, but don't be afraid. You will learn it if it's important. As I said, preparation is key. Have a clear set of expectation, know what you deserve and why you deserve it. Being able to articulate that confidently and putting forward your abilities and your achievements can sometimes feel awkward. Often women look at pay conversations or telling exact numbers of what you want in your salary as a taboo. One of the managers even told me that she explicitly asks at the end of the conversation, what is your salary expectation? She said, women are less likely to tell what numbers do they expect compared to men. At the end of the conversation, she says, often a man will say he's expecting X dollars at the end of this review, whereas a woman would try and hint to that number or try and, paraphrase towards those numbers, but may not explicitly say the numbers. And so as a manager, sometimes it's important to ask that open-ended question, what is it that you're looking for? But as a person who's trying to even progress, it's important to try to get comfortable I know it's uncomfortable to try and get comfortable as to say, this is what I'm exactly expecting, and this is the data points why I think so I should be expecting that. Also, it's important to remember not being given what you asked for is not the end of the conversation. Be open to negotiation. I remember for one of the reviews, I asked X dollars and I was not given, and there was a gap. And then what I ended that conversation with them is, I understand you cannot give me what I'm asking for, but what I want to know is, what do I need to do to get to those numbers? And can I be reviewed again in 6 months? And to my surprise, I was reviewed again in 6 months and I was given what I asked for. So the lesson I learned is you only get when you ask for it. So in summary, we have learned what things can be done at an organizational level, at a management level, and an individual level. What I want to try and say is it is not one person that's going to make a difference. It's all of us collectively that is going to make a difference. I hope at the end of this talk, you go back to your organization and find out whether your organization has any gender analysis when it comes to salaries. Ask that question. It is an uncomfortable question, but it's important to ask. At least it will drive your organization to have a plan for it if it doesn't. We don't want to leave this open gap for a century. It's not fair for our sisters, our daughters, and for the future generation that is coming. And it's not fair on us as well. We are part of this generation and part of this gap. So we need to work hard to try and bridge it. I would like to close with thinking, what are the responsibilities for those around us and our organization to help close the gap? This is an open-ended question, and I want you all to think and see what would be your response. Feel free to tweet me or include me on LinkedIn and share what was your reflection at the end of this talk.
Thank you, Yaksha, for all these insights and sharing your thoughts and also your own experiences about that. I think this is a very important topic. We are open now for our questions and answer session. So if you have questions, just ping them to the chat and we will, I will moderate them to Yaksha and we can learn even more from her experiences, and maybe also others want to share some experiences. Yeah, I would actually have a question, because you mentioned also that when women and men or women and underrepresented gender minorities are negotiating for their salary, there are differences in how people ask and how they actually negotiate. Do you have ideas why is that, and why is that still there?
It's a hard one, because I think one of it is awareness. I can say from my personal example, I was just not aware that I could negotiate for my salary when I started my career. I just thought, oh yeah, my manager will find out what I do, and he'll come and think what's relevant, like what's right for me, and they'll do it. In all honesty, they try their best to do it. But it's just not, we don't have a system in place to make it very objective as of now. It's getting better. And so it's important for us to try and help our managers also to be objective by providing those data points. Another reason, I guess, women shy away from negotiation as they reach their, I guess, midway in the career, their focus and priorities change. Sometimes they want to take carer's leave, or sometimes they want to do other things. Say someone wants to travel around, and they would try and negotiate flexibility. And I think that's a wrong thing. It's like trying to negotiate flexibility and pay into one thing, and then not focusing on your pay could be very easy. So splitting those things is so important. Don't try to combine your negotiation about flexibility at work with salary. Keep them two separate topics, because they shouldn't be intertwined together.
Thank you. There's another question from Ellie, because there are cultural differences. If you can ask for salary or for money, how much do your colleagues earn and things like that. So for example, in Germany, you don't ask how much the other person earns. That's culturally not coming. And Ellie's question is, how do you think the cultural aspect about not talking about salary is affecting the current landscape of the gender gap?
It is such a big one. It is such a big one. I saw a TED Talk for this prep, and there was a lady in New Zealand. She was talking about how culturally people are not comfortable talking about their salaries. And what she did in activity is she asked everyone, because it was a physical TED talk, and she's like, okay, turn to your neighbor and tell them how much money you make. And there was a silence, and obviously everyone laughed. So yes, of course, it is hard, and definitely it plays a big role. What I would say is, in Australia as well, we don't share individual salaries. What we share is bands and groups and anonymized data. So basically, I guess, in short, we have, I guess, 4 or 5 grades in organization, and some organization have 7 levels, 6 levels, depending which country you're on. They try to even align them to the, I guess, country also has some levels or standards. What we try to do is we publish the median salary, the max and the min for that band. And what we try to do is, what is the gender gap in that band? So what we learn from that is also, are women slower to progress, or are men faster to progress, or is it the other way around? Or are more women leaving the organization? Because that skews the data to try and find out, why is there a gender pay gap as well on each of those bands.
Cool. Thank you for that explanation. Another question, or actually first comment and question from Ina. There is a study that links the performance of women is to their likability. My guess is they do not negotiate in order to not be perceived as pushy or too aggressive and so on. Could this be an explanation?
Definitely. This is so true. I used to think that way too. And to be honest, I don't know how many of you know me, but I've been known to be very assertive, very pushy. I've been even called that. So, and I don't know why women get these tags, whereas men don't, to be honest. And men are assessed for their potential versus women are assessed on their performance. So what I would say is, our friend is data. Try and collect as many data points as you can. If you don't think you have internal data points available, get external information. There are a lot of data points published in the market about salaries. There are a lot of data points published in the market around gender pay gap. If you just Google, World Economic Forum has a lot of information around it. Well, I can share that link. I can't pronounce it properly. World Gender Equality, and there's something stand for A in Australia, also has a forum which it's called WGEA. It publishes data. It publishes how you can prepare for your data. It gives you tools. It gives you a lot of, I guess, resources in terms of what you could be doing to minimize the pay gap. Also, why it exists. What is the breakdown by the industries as well. So in order to come back to your question, yes, you're right. Negotiation is harder for women because they don't want to be labeled. And I agree with you on that. And I think data is our friend. We should become friends with data and use that for our benefit.
Cool, thank you. And you could also share these resources maybe later with Steffi and me, because we're sending out a follow-up message to everyone, and then everybody could have access to that. I think that could be super helpful. There is also a question from Eloise that is quite linked to this. First, they say, great talk. And do you have any tips on how to improve our negotiation skills?
I think one of the things is do your homework, preparation. What I do now is I almost keep a diary throughout the year on, I guess, my little achievements, my big achievements, and use different things to try and communicate how I've accelerated over the year to whenever I want to have my performance conversation, and use those kind of tools. Structure your conversation. I guess the focus should be less on negotiation. The focus should be, what am I presenting so that it becomes easier for my organization or my manager or whoever is reviewing me, my leader, to make an easier decision. There you go. I've done half of their job. So it's easier for them to try and be my advocate in that context. One of the things I do is, one tip is keeping a log or a diary of all the achievement. Keeping a log or a diary of your constructive feedback is also important, because that way, what feedback you've got, you have worked on it, you have improved on it, and you want to show that how you did it. Keeping a little, I guess, we are a professional services firm, so client feedback is super important for us. So any form of client feedback I get from my clients, I collect that and present it back. So what I do is, it's not just the industry data or industry trends in terms of salary. I put all these different things together. Another thing to think about is what is important in your organization. In our organization, there are 3 aspects that we are assessed in Australia, at least. One is your community contribution, one is your contribution to the client, and one is your contribution towards internal Thoughtworks, things like helping junior thought workers, or helping the communities, like, we have a focus communities like BA, product, project managers, those communities as well. And I collect the data on that structure. So depending what's important in your organization, try and collect those kind of information and put a case for yourself.
Thank you. This is actually super helpful. And there is already another question quite similar to the previous one. And there was also a question I asked myself during the talk. This question is from Diana. Do you have any advice on how to get more comfortable when negotiating and asking for a salary increase? Like, do you have any tips how to practice to get more comfortable?
Yeah, so one of the things I would say is find a friend, talk to your friend, run your deck past your friend. I actually, when I did this talks, I started this, I guess this is a much developed talk compared to what I started. I did my first talk at 2013 at a company event. And I had a bunch of women come to me at the end of the talk and say, will you review my presentation for my peer review? Will you do that for me? I'm like, sure, why not? And that's how I started reviewing some people's presentations before they go for their review. And then I didn't realize that these women were going to their presentation with, I guess, sticky Post-its and with points to these better decks. And there was a point where one of my managing directors came and told me, good on you for helping these women, because I'm getting better quality information from these people so that I can make better decisions. So what I would suggest is practice it with a friend. Also practice it with somebody who is not necessarily a manager, but a leader in your organization. So somebody who is senior to you, practice it with them. Keep it short. Don't try to keep it too long, because sometimes people don't have patience to read a lot of information. So keep it very focused, short, sharp. And I know it's hard, but get comfortable. I can share with you. I started with, say, this is the salary range I want. Then I got better with narrowing that range, and I got better to say, this is the number I'm looking for. I'm not still good at it, and I'm still working on it. And so it's a journey. Don't think you will get better at it just by doing one meeting. You will get better at it over a period of time. And the output also you will see is over a period of time. So set yourself an expectation that it's not going to change overnight. It will take some time to change and get better.
Thank you. I have a comment from David here. They say, asking for salary requires a minimum of self-worth. One aspect, I believe, affects the difference in negotiation between women and men is that women are often, through many channels, are made to feel inferior. So I believe an important aspect is also a cultural shift. And there, like, linked to that is a question from Susanna. Do you think there is a relationship between imposter syndrome and lower salary for women? I assume there are also cases where we don't negotiate because we think we don't deserve it.
I completely agree with you. And I completely agree with you, David. Thank you. There was a recent example also where I was in a meeting where there was a woman and there was a man. And that meeting, there was a comment made, and then the woman tried to correct. And the man just said, oh, yeah, I know it. And he just moved on without even respecting what she was trying to say. Now, whatever she said and whatever he said, I don't think it matters. I think it was the way he said it. She tried to be very objective in giving what she thought was right. So unknowingly or knowingly, he had made her feel uncomfortable. And I was part of that as well. I felt uncomfortable for her. So it's really important how our behaviors make other people feel, regardless you're a man or a woman. It's very important not to make anybody feel less or inferior. And that drives, I guess, their own mental health. And it's got a circular spiral effect on how they look at themselves and how they assess themselves. That comes down to what Suzanne is saying, the imposter syndrome. I agree with you completely. For many years, I thought, oh, I don't know what I'm worth. I'm just going to go with whatever the data is published. As long as I'm in the middle, I'm okay. I don't have to be the top performer as long as I'm not the bottom performer. That's not good enough. I want to be known to what is good. So that's where I started trying to dig deep or unpack a little bit. What are the steps to take over there? Imposter syndrome is hard. It's really, really hard. Even I go into my own spiral sometimes that I'm not good enough and I shouldn't be doing this. I don't know why am I here. I think the best thing is to have those conversations with yourself and let yourself be in that moment when you feel low. Because when you try to change your mind when you feel low, it's not going to work. Take a break, look at the same problem again after some time, and you will have better ideas. And having a diary or a log helps you a lot. Like what I do is a rolling diary now. What I had for 2017, what I had for 2018, what I have for 2019. So sometimes what I find a rolling diary just helps me keep a structure. And what I do is every time I have an imposter syndrome, or if I feel like this is so stupid, Jaksha, why are you even doing this? Why are you in this position? I just kind of take a break, live in that moment, let myself feel low, enjoy it, have a chocolate, look at that thing after a week, and I'll have better ideas how to look at it. I don't think I can help someone with the imposter syndrome, but I can tell you one thing, it's okay. And it's important to live in that moment and look at the problem later.
Thank you. That's actually also very encouraging. There's a follow-up question from Susanna, from David to Susanna's question. Isn't the fact that men are assessed based on potential and women on their accomplishments a reinforcement of this lack of confidence? How difficult would it be to stop assessing men on potential?
It's a very interesting question. And I'm not a manager, so it's hard for me to answer. And that's why the second part of this topic was really hard. And I went and interviewed a few managers to try and do that. One of the things to do is having equal assessment criteria and having equal expectations, and being specific about those expectations is important. And that way you're removing all those biases around potential or biases around, performance alone, and try to make it an equal playing field. So that way you're focusing on the data, you're focused on the consistent criteria or equal criteria for both men and women. I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah, I think it did. Thank you so much. And then last but not least, our last question. How do you go about negotiating against subjective expectations? It isn't always easy to get objective parameters to evaluate our work and share it as data points, simply because the expectations aren't clearly specified.
Yeah, so I guess the problem starts from the expectations are not clearly defined. So I would work on that. I would actively work on clarifying those expectations and take out the subjective aspect, even from your mind out. So sometimes you will hear explanations which you think, oh, this is so subjective. How am I going to fix this? Or how am I going to even work on this? Or I don't think I could do this. So in that context, what I want to try and do is, okay, what is expected and how can I make it as objective as possible for myself? And it's not an easy thing. It might take you some time to come to that objective expectations and then work from that objective expectation backwards. I don't know if I'm answering your question, but I guess the hardest thing is if the expectation itself is not objective, you are going to find it to be a subjective conversation.
Thank you. As our hour is almost over, we have to come to an end, and I'd like to say thank you to everyone, first obviously to Yaksha for the great talk, and to everyone else for the great contributions and all your questions. We have some other updates because Yaksha has actually shared a lot of resources. You don't have to write them down now. We will send a follow-up message, as mentioned before, where we include all these resources on how to develop and get more information about the gender pay gap and also practical tips on what to do. And there are also some reflection questions about this topic that Yaksha has shared with us. These are more like questions you can take home, and we will also send them to you and think about either ping them back to us and discuss with us, or discuss them with your colleagues and friends, and just as a takeaway and some food for thoughts. We will also share them with you. On our side, the last update, as I said in the beginning, this was the 7th event of this row. We want to continue, but in Europe, we're going kind of in a summer break as most people go on vacation. So we will have a small break until the end of September, and then we will restart with the event series. And yeah, you will also see it on all channels as usually. Thank you all so much for those who had their lunch break. I hope you had a good lunch break and happy continue working. And yeah, for the rest of you, happy evening, happy rest of the day, and see you soon, hopefully in our next event.
Thank you, everyone. Sorry you couldn't see me doing bye.